Hello, we're Mark and Debbie, and welcome to Living Your Senior Life, the podcast where we share tips, ideas, and inspiration to help you make the most of every season of life. Whether it's health, lifestyle, or just a little bit of fun, we're here to help you live well, live fully, and live your best senior life. Before we begin, two important notes. First, a content warning. This episode discusses death, loss, grief, depression, and suicidal thoughts. If you're in immediate crisis, please pause this episode and call or text 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. They're available 24/7 and ready to help. Second, a medical disclaimer. The information in this episode is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or a qualified mental health provider with any questions about grief, depression, or other health concerns. With that said, today we're talking about one of life's most difficult experiences, coping with loss and grief. If you've recently lost a spouse, sibling, close friend, or anyone dear to you, this episode is for you. And if you're supporting someone who's grieving, you'll find valuable insights here too. Grief in later life can carry unique challenges. You may face multiple losses within a short time, a smaller support network than before, and advice that doesn't always fit, especially when it comes to that well-known 5 stages of grief model. Here's the truth, you're not doing it wrong. In this episode, we'll talk about what current research actually reveals about grief, why the old models are outdated, and, most importantly, what truly helps. We'll explore the difference between healthy grief and the signs that it may be time to seek professional support. We'll share practical coping strategies designed specifically for older adults, and we'll discuss prolonged grief disorder, a newly recognized condition that affects about 7% of bereaved individuals. Whether you're in the early days of loss or years into your healing journey, there's something here for you. Because grief doesn't follow a timeline, and healing looks different for everyone. So grab a cup of coffee or tea, get comfortable, and join us for an honest, compassionate conversation about loss, healing, and moving forward.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We break down complex topics, look at the latest science, and really try to give you the core insights.
Yeah, the things hidden in the details.
Exactly. And today we're tackling something incredibly universal, but also deeply personal: grief. Specifically, we're looking at how loss can feel different, maybe heavier in later life. The challenges can really stack up.
That's right. We've been digging into some really comprehensive sources, guides specifically for seniors coping with loss. They blend, practical steps with the latest evidence-based mental health insights.
So our mission for this deep dive is pretty important, I think. We wanted to give you a shortcut to understanding the current science of grief.
Yeah, cut through the noise.
Right. Debunk some common myths that honestly cause more pain, and highlight the specific kinds of support older adults might need when facing these big changes.
It's necessary because, as our sources describe it, the experience for seniors often involves this layered quality. It's often not just one loss they're dealing with. It's what the experts call cumulative grief.
Okay, cumulative grief. Let's unpack that because it sounds, well, frankly, exhausting. Losing a spouse or partner, particularly after many, many years, it's not just missing the person, is it? The sources call it a loss multiplier.
Precisely. It multiplies.
Yeah.
Because when that central relationship ends, several other things can vanish almost overnight.
Yeah.
Beyond losing your main companion, your best friend, you might suddenly lose a chunk of your financial security or the shared routines that basically structured your whole day. Even couple-based friendships can fade.
Oh, right. The invitations might stop coming if you're suddenly single.
It happens.
Yeah.
And you also lose sometimes a part of your identity. The we becomes I again. Maybe you were the primary caregiver or the one who managed the finances or the social planner. And suddenly that role is just gone.
That's huge.
Yeah. One source put it really powerfully. It's the loss of both others and the wholeness of the self. And this often hits right when your natural support system might be shrinking anyway. Friends move, they pass away themselves, or they're dealing with their own health issues. It can lead to pretty significant isolation.
And the sources really hammer home the physical side of this too. It's not just emotional pain. For older adults especially, grief is a full body experience.
Absolutely. The physical toll is undeniable. Bereavement in later life often brings increased fatigue, that kind of Brain fog, difficulty concentrating, memory issues, changes in appetite or sleep are common, and critically, it can worsen pre-existing health conditions. Statistically, bereaved older adults have a noticeably higher risk of hospitalization in the months after a major loss.
So it really is a whole system event.
Okay, which brings us to maybe the biggest myth we need to tackle when we talk about modern grief understanding.
I think I know where you're going. The famous 5 stages of grief, right? Denial, anger, bargaining.
Depression, acceptance, yes.
Yeah.
Ask almost anyone on the street, that's what they'll tell you grief looks like.
It's just baked into our culture.
It is. But here's the crucial point, the real insight from our deep dive. That model from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, it was never intended for bereaved people mourning a loss.
Wait, seriously, that feels like a massive piece of information hiding in plain sight.
It really is. Kubler-Ross developed her stages by talking to terminally ill patients about their own approaching death. Applying it to someone grieving a loved one is, as the sources make clear, a fundamental misunderstanding. And, importantly, it lacks scientific backing in actual bereavement research. Rigorous studies just don't show people moving through grief in those neat, fixed stages.
And that misunderstanding must cause so much extra pain. Like, if I'm not feeling angry, I might worry I'm grieving wrong or something.
Exactly. That's the harm it does. It sets up this expectation of linear process, and when your experience doesn't match, it can lead to shame, self-doubt, feeling like you're failing at grief.
Which is the last thing you need.
The last thing. In reality, research by people like George Bonanno shows something quite different. He found that around 60% of bereaved individuals actually show remarkable resilience. Grief isn't a tidy path. It's often more like a messy, unpredictable roller coaster. Lots of ups and downs, loops, unexpected turns.
So the takeaway is, ditch the timeline. If you're not following any stages, you're not broken. You're actually normal.
Pretty much, yes.
You're human.
Okay, so if the stages are out, what should we be thinking about? What models actually reflect this resilient, messy reality?
Well, a really influential model in modern research, sort of the gold standard now, is called the dual process model.
Dual process, okay.
The core idea is that healthy grieving involves oscillation, like swinging back and forth between 2 different kinds of coping.
Oscillation. I like that word. It sounds more fluid. So what are the 2 things you're swinging between? If you're grieving, what does that look like day to day?
Okay, think of it like this. One side is loss-oriented coping. This is when you're directly confronting the pain of the loss.
Like crying, looking at photos. Exactly. Yearning for the person, maybe visiting places that remind you of them, really feeling the absence. That's loss-oriented.
Got it.
The other side is restoration-oriented coping. This is about adapting to the changed world. It's the practical stuff, the rebuilding.
So like learning how to manage the finances if your spouse always did that, or maybe joining a new club, trying to build a new routine.
Precisely. Tackling new tasks, forming new relationships, finding new ways to structure your days now that things are different. Healthy adaptation, the model suggests, involves moving back and forth between these 2 modes. You engage with the pain, then you step back and engage with the demands of your new reality, then back again.
So it's not about avoiding the pain, but balancing it. Like maybe you spend an afternoon feeling really sad and missing them, that's loss-oriented. But then that evening, you actively make plans to learn that new skill you need, that's restoration.
Exactly. You need both. Staying only in the loss part can lead to getting stuck. Staying only in the restoration part might mean you're avoiding the necessary emotional work. The oscillation is key.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
And this ties into another really important modern concept. Continuing bonds.
Right. Now this one feels like a big shift too. For years, the message was often about closure, about letting go. Isn't holding on to a bond like denial? How do the sources define a healthy continuing bond?
That's the crucial difference, Elsie. It's not about pretending they're still physically here or refusing to accept the reality of the death. It's about recognizing that the relationship doesn't just vanish. It transforms.
Transforms how?
A healthy continuing bond means finding ways to maintain an ongoing positive connection. Maybe you talk about the person often, sharing memories. Maybe you keep certain objects that feel meaningful. Maybe you feel guided by their values when making decisions. It's about integrating their memory and their impact into your life as you move forward.
So the goal isn't to move on from them, but to move forward with them in a new way.
Beautifully put, yes. It's about integration, not amputation. And this often leads naturally into meaning-making. Finding ways their life continues to have significance for you. maybe discovering strengths you didn't know you had, or gaining new perspectives because of the loss.
Okay, so resilience is common. Adaptation involves this oscillation and continuing bonds. But not everyone adapts smoothly, right? Some people do get stuck.
That's true. And it's really important we acknowledge that. This is where the formal diagnosis of prolonged grief disorder, or PGD, comes in.
PGD. How common is this?
Our research suggests that while most people, the vast majority, do navigate grief adaptively over time, about 7% of bereaved individuals might develop PGD.
7%. Okay.
And it's now officially recognized as a distinct mental health condition in the main diagnostic manuals, like the DSM-5-TR and the ICD-11.
So what's the line? When does deep sadness become this clinical disorder, PGD?
It really comes down to two things: time and impairment. PGD is defined by intense grief symptoms that continue for more than a year after the loss for adults.
A full year.
Yes, at least a year. And crucially, these symptoms significantly interfere with daily life work, relationships, self-care, basic functioning.
What are the core symptoms we're talking about?
The key ones are things like a persistent, intense yearning or longing for the person who died, a real preoccupation with them or the circumstances of the death. Often there's marked identity disruption, like feeling a part of you died with them, difficulty accepting the reality of the death, maybe feeling numb or detached, and a real inability to re-engage with ongoing life, pursue interests, or look towards the future.
That sounds intense. But some of those things might overlap with major depression, right? How can you tell the difference if someone is experiencing that level of persistent sadness?
That's a really important question, and a proper assessment by a professional is vital because the treatment approaches can differ. The key difference often lies in the focus of the distress. With PGD, the intense pain, the yearning, the non-acceptance, it's all centered specifically on the loss of that particular person. With major depression, the sadness is often more pervasive, less tied only to the grief. It might include feelings of worthlessness, hopelessness about everything, and a loss of interest in all activities, not just those related to the deceased.
Got it. So PGD is grief-specific pain, while depression might be broader.
Generally speaking, yes. And PGD often requires specific therapies, sometimes forms of cognitive behavioral therapy tailored to grief, to help process the loss and integrate it.
So the crucial message here is, if you or someone you know is experiencing that kind of intense, disabling grief, and it's been going on for, say, 6 months to a year or more, it's really important to seek professional help. Don't assume it will just fade on its own.
Absolutely. And of course, if there's any immediate crisis, any thoughts of suicide or self-harm, the resource is always there. Call or text 988. That's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's critical.
Okay, so PGD is the outlier, the 7% needing specific clinical support. Let's pivot back to the other 93%, the majority, who are navigating this incredibly difficult path. What are the essential day-to-day strategies for adapting, especially for older adults who might have those extra layers of challenge we talked about?
Well, the sources really emphasize that self-care isn't selfish. It's actually essential for healing. It's the foundation.
And for seniors, that might look a bit different.
It often means really focusing on the basics. Physical self-care is huge. Trying to maintain regular sleep patterns, even if sleep is disrupted. Eating nutritious meals, even if appetite is low, small. Frequent meals might be better. Gentle physical activity like walking or stretching can make a difference. And crucially, keeping up with existing medical appointments. The stress of grief can really impact chronic health conditions, so managing those is vital.
Right, don't let those slide. And emotionally, beyond the dual process model, what helps day to day?
Allowing yourself space. Things like journaling can be helpful for some. Creating a memory box or album. And really importantly, giving yourself permission to have good days and bad days without guilt. Remembering that oscillation, it's okay to laugh one moment and cry the next.
Yeah, letting go of that shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And leaning on support systems. We talked about isolation risk. So seeking out support is key. Professional help, like grief counselors who specialize in working with older adults, is valuable. And telehealth has made this much more accessible, which is great if mobility is an issue. Support groups are also incredibly powerful. Widow or widower groups run by hospice services, sometimes faith-based groups. Connecting with others who truly get it can reduce that profound sense of being alone in your grief.
And faith or spirituality itself can be a huge source of comfort for many older adults, right?
Absolutely. For those who have a spiritual or religious framework, it often provides immense support, offering comfort, maybe a hope of reunion, a sense of meaning or purpose, and importantly, community rituals and support networks like prayer groups or meditation.
Okay, now we have to touch on the practical stuff. The stuff that feels overwhelming but just has to be done. The administrative checklist after a death.
Ah, yes. The non-emotional, but still incredibly stressful tasks. Losing a spouse often means suddenly inheriting a whole new set of responsibilities. Finances, home maintenance, things maybe they always handled.
So, what's the key advice there? Where do you even start?
The number one piece of advice from almost every source is don't rush major decisions in the first year, if possible.
Like selling the house.
Exactly. Or making huge changes to investments, or giving away all their belongings immediately. Grief clouds judgment. Give yourself time for the fog to lift a little before making life-altering choices.
Okay, good advice, but some things can't wait, right? The immediate paperwork. You mentioned earlier needing lots of death certificates, like 10 or 15 copies. Is it really that complicated?
It often is, yeah. You'll likely need certified copies for Social Security, life insurance claims, pension providers, banks, transferring titles for property or vehicles. So the list goes on. It's better to get more than you think you'll need up front.
Okay, so order plenty of death certificates. What else is immediate?
Notifying the Social Security Administration is usually a top priority. You typically need to call them. The number is 1-800-772-1213. Contacting life insurance companies and banks to understand accounts and benefits is also crucial early on. Arranging the funeral or memorial service, of course.
And then later comes updating your own will, learning maybe how to manage the budget or fix things around the house.
Right. Those are often part of that restoration-oriented coping we talked about. Learning new skills, taking on new roles. That's part of adjusting.
And one last thing here sometimes. If a spouse had a long illness, the grieving process actually started before they died, right? That's anticipatory grief.
Yes, exactly. Anticipatory grief is very real, especially for caregivers. It's that process of starting to adjust emotionally, practically, even spiritually, to the impending loss while the person is still alive. It's exhausting, it's valid, and it's a normal part of the journey for many. So wrapping this all up, what are the absolute key takeaways for you listening to this deep dive?
I think first, grief is not linear. Forget the stages. Resilience is actually more common than we think.
Right. And healthy adaptation usually involves that dual process model, that back and forth between facing the pain and rebuilding your life.
And remember the concept of continuing bonds. It's healthy to maintain a connection. And finally, be aware of that roughly 7% risk of prolonged grief disorder. If grief stays incredibly intense and disabling for over a year, specialized help is needed.
And the final message, really, is about finding your way forward. Healing isn't about forgetting or getting closure in some neat way. It's about learning how to carry the loss, how to transform the relationship, and how to weave that love into the fabric of your rebuilt life. Yeah. And asking for help, whether it's navigating paperwork or dealing with overwhelming emotions, it's never a weakness. It's a strength. It's part of that adaptation process.
It connects back to that idea of the continuing bond being healthy, doesn't it? You're not erasing them. You're finding a new way to keep them with you as you move forward.
Precisely.
So we'll leave you with this thought to consider. We learned that maintaining a continuing bond is healthy. The aim is to move forward while keeping the deceased as part of your story. If the pain of loss transforms, allowing joy and sorrow to coexist, what new identity or purpose will you discover that truly honors the love you carried forward?
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. If you're grieving right now, please remember this. You're stronger than you think. The fact that you're here, listening, learning, and seeking support shows tremendous courage and self-awareness. Grief doesn't follow a timeline, and there's no right way to do it. Whether you're in the early days of loss or years into your journey, be patient with yourself. Allow yourself to feel what you feel, and don't hesitate to reach out for help when you need it. You can read the full article this episode is based on at livingyourSeniorLife.com, where you'll also find the resources we mentioned: crisis hotlines, support groups, and grief counseling services. A quick reminder, everything we've discussed today is for educational purposes only and isn't a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice. If you're experiencing severe grief, depression, or thoughts of self-harm, please reach out to a qualified healthcare provider or call or text 988 anytime for immediate crisis support. If today's episode helped you, please consider sharing it with someone else who might be grieving. Grief can feel isolating, but we're all in this together, and sharing resources like this helps build a more supportive community. You can subscribe to Living Your Senior Life wherever you get your podcasts, so you'll never miss an episode. And if there's a topic you'd like us to cover in the future, send me an email or leave a comment on the blog at livingyourSeniorLife.com. Until next time, take care of yourself, be gentle with yourself, and remember, healing is possible even when it doesn't feel like it.